If you want to build wealth, then you need to understand the concept of compounding interest. And the fact is that most people hijack their wealth journey because they don't understand how to apply this concept in their own life. And it has the power to either make wealth building incredibly easy or financially destroy you and make things a lot more difficult than it needs to be. Because most people don't understand it. They think that wealth building is a lot harder than it is. And in this video, we're going to teach you exactly how to use it so that you can make wealth building something that seems possible no matter where you're starting and at any income level. Let me ask you a question. If you could double a penny every single day, from day one, you have 1 penny, day two, you have 2 pennies, day three, you have 4 pennies, and you keep doubling that amount, how many days would it take for you to become the richest person in the world? So from day one to day 10, you still have modest growth. And actually, by day 10, you only have $5. By day 20, you're right over $20,000. Here's where it gets a little crazy. So by day 30, only 10 days later, you are now a multimillionaire at $5 million. Only 9 days later, you actually become a billionaire as compounding interest really starts to accelerate. So could you believe that only 8 days later, 47 days total, you are now the richest person in the world at $700 billion. Now, I know this example might sound a little ridiculous, but it paints the picture of what unlimited compounding interest could actually do, where we have the ability to compound every single day at a really high interest rate, 100%, where we're doubling our money. It shows you how a little thing like a penny can grow into a very large amount when it has enough time to grow on itself. And so I want to take this principle and actually apply it in our real lives so that you can understand how to take and harness this power. Because here's the problem with the example that I just gave you. It's not realistic for a couple of reasons. You can think about compound interest as a soup, and the key components that go into the soup are a few things. The first is, how long does your money have to be able to grow on itself? In the penny example, it was growing on itself and doubling every single day. The truth is that in real life, money doesn't do this. In fact, for an average person, your money is going to double every 7 to 10 years. This can seem like a long time, and it's one of the reasons why it's so important that we start investing early. The other key element is your interest rate, which is the amount that your money is growing. So, to show you this power, I'm going to take a hypothetical example. Let's say that you want to retire by the time you're 65. What we want to look at is, for every dollar that you save at any age, how much will that dollar have time to grow so that by the time you're 65, it's larger than it is today? So just like the penny in day one becomes billions of dollars in day 47, how much can we have that dollar grow depending on when we start saving? So how powerful is a dollar depending on what age we're at? I'm going to show you the 90% of people that don't use this and actually have money work against them. And then I'm going to show you some examples in the middle that help you better understand why actually investing your money is so critical towards your wealth building journey. Okay, so let me get into this example, and please don't leave because you're seeing a spreadsheet. It's only to help visualize this, and it all makes sense in a minute. Don't worry about the numbers right now. So let's say that you were just born today and your parents were financially savvy and they wanted you to be a millionaire by the time you turned 65. The question is, how much money would they have to start saving every month to have you be a millionaire? Well, so to look at this and the power of compounding interest, I want to look at a few things. I want to look at this dollar power that I'm showing you. So in this example, if your dollar could earn a 10% interest rate every single year, which is aggressive, and I'm going to show you some lower interest rates later to show you the power of how little interest rates make a huge difference. But let's say you could make 10% interest every single year. If you started investing the day you were born, each dollar is basically worth $490 by the time you're 65. So think about a power level. You could say that a dollar is 490 times more powerful if you just started to invest the day that a child was born. What does that actually mean when a dollar is that powerful? So to save $1 million by the time you're 65, these parents would only need to invest $16.29 up until that person is 65 years old. The incredible thing is that your money would be earning almost $1 million all by itself. And how does that work? It's again through compound interest because you give your dollar so much time to double. So at a 10% interest rate, your money's doubling every 7 years. So if you start investing day you're born, at year 7, it's doubled. At year 14, it's doubled again, and on until you hit 65. This can be really surprising for people because this starts to add a new mindset where it looks at, well, if I started saving today, how much more powerful is my dollar by the time I'm going to need it when I retire? So let's go down here and show some other examples. So let's say that your parents are not so financially savvy and they haven't been saving money since you were born. Let's say you're 18 years old and you don't know much about money, but you really want to get into it and you're going to start investing and you start earning a 10% interest rate. Well, if you could do that for every single year, this is the power of your dollar. It's 88 times. What that is saying is that a dollar saved at 18 will be $88 by the time you reach year 65. And so this has some really important mindset impacts. So imagine if you're 18 years old and you have a hard time trying to save money and you want to spend every dollar you make because you're just, you're having a good time. You're 18 years old. Well, what this can help you start doing is if you could even just save a little bit of money, every dollar you save is actually $88 far into the future. And so maybe you can just start cutting little things that don't do a lot for you. Or if you work a little bit more, another couple hours, that money has the ability to compound in ways that it's really kind of hard to understand. And so let's go to this example. So this 18-year-old, if they save $91 a month from the time they're 18 to when they turn 65, they will become millionaires and they will have contributed only $51,000 of their own money. Meanwhile, their money would have earned on its own $948,000. This really just hammers home the fact that wealth building doesn't have to start with a really high paying job. And that's the lie that a lot of people believe. They actually believe that the only way to become a millionaire is by really working for it. So when we look at this contribution column, people typically believe that the only way that they'll build wealth is by working, and they don't think about how their dollars can earn for them. And so if you give enough interest and enough time to your investments, these are the effects that you'll start to see. I just want to call out this graph because it's really key for you to understand. So in blue are the dollars that you have to earn at work, and in red is the money that these dollars earn on their own. Here's a really cool thing. So the earlier you start, this whole area in red are dollars that earn by themselves without you having to do any work. What you can see is that the earlier you start, the stronger your dollars are in this compounding effect. The longer you wait, the more contributions you have to put in on your own to hit this $1 million by the time you're 65. The cool message is that even if you're in your middle age here or even a little older, I mean, really, around 50 to 52, you're still at a place where if you put a dollar in, you're still almost doubling it twice by the time you're turning 65 at this 10% interest rate, which is aggressive. I would probably use a 7% interest rate to be more realistic. But the key message is that if you're younger, you have a lot of time for this effect to take place. Okay, so let me show you the unfortunate truth of what most people experience. Maybe they do want to save for their children, but they don't believe in investing or never really learned, and they just stash their money in a mattress somewhere. This is just hypothetical. But let's say that they have bad inflation wherever this person lives. And right now inflation's a hot topic. We can all feel it where your dollar is buying you less and less and less. And so if you don't invest and you just let your money sit there and get eaten away by inflation, basically what inflation is it means that the dollar that you have can purchase less than before. And so at a 4% inflation rate, what this is saying is if I were to save a dollar when this person's born, how much would that dollar be worth by the time they were 65? In this example, where you have a 4% inflation rate every single year, basically, if you saved the dollar when they were born, it would only be worth 8 cents when they were 65 years old. If you were going to try to save $1 million and you continued to have inflation eat away at your money, you would actually have to save $3,653 every month to become a millionaire by the time you're 65. And in fact, the really sad thing is that you would have to contribute almost $3 million of your own money only to be left with $1 million at the end of 65 years. Your money, unlike in the other example where it's worked and it's earned you almost $1 million, has actually lost nearly $2 million of value. Well, let's say your inflation's not so bad, but you decide that you're not really interested in investing and you have your money sitting in a savings account that's not earning any interest. So this is the other example that a lot of people find themselves in. So they work really hard, and they're diligent about maybe saving a little bit of money every single month. But what happens is that no matter at any age, because they don't invest, their money isn't compounding. And so a dollar you earn the first day you're born stays just a dollar. And so over here, it takes $1,200 every month to earn $1 million. And you can see that you have to contribute $1 million of your own money. And the sooner you start that, the less you have to contribute. But either way, your money is not earning you anything. And this is the unfortunate truth: is wealth building can feel really hard when you're not having compound interest work for you, like in our first example. And this is the lie that most people find themselves in: is money can feel really difficult when you don't allow it to grow. And it's hard to conceptualize this because it takes a long time for this effect to really take hold. Okay, so now let's go to a middle of the road example that starts to outline how small differences in the interest that you earn on your money plays a huge role in your long-term success. We've already looked at a 10% interest rate, and we've looked at what happens when people allow inflation to eat away at their money with no investments. But what happens with a middle of the road investment that we can look at? So in these examples, this is the nuance that's really important: is a small change in interest rate that you earn makes a huge difference. And so it's really awesome that people have gotten into high yield savings accounts, and banks are starting to pay a little bit more interest as inflation is taking off. But the truth is that even at a 4% interest rate, let's say you were just born and you start trying to save money for retirement, the dollar power at a 4% interest rate is only about 12. And so every dollar you save at this point is worth 12 by the time you're 65. Here's the incredible thing: if you go up to 7% interest, so only 3% more, you can see the power differential here. So at a 7% interest rate, your dollar power is about 81 times. And in the other example where we talked about 10%, it was over 400. This is the incredible thing: is that these small differences in interest rate, they add up over time. And you can kind of think about this like an airplane. So with an airplane, if you change the angle of your flight by just like 1 degree, and let's say you're going from Florida to Washington, you'll end up like in a completely different part of the world. And why is that? Because 1 degree change done again and again and again as the flight is going very fast and at a great distance, that 1 degree change makes a huge difference. And it's the same thing with compound interest. So 3% interest rates may not seem like a lot, but if you compound it over 65 years, it really starts to add up. So let's go to this example. If you were to save your money in like a high yield savings account, and it did happen to save 4% a year, you would still have to contribute about $216,000 to be a millionaire by the time you're 65. Now, in and of itself, that's pretty amazing because you're putting in a dollar, and by the end of it, you've almost 5 times that money. On the other hand, at a 7% interest rate, your contributions are only $55,000, and your money has worked for you and earned almost $1 million on its own. Now, let's look at some other examples, because I know that because this compounding at the day you're born isn't really realistic. And what happens with a lot of people is that they don't really start thinking about these things until later in life. So what I want to show you is how these dollar powers start to decrease pretty significantly as you age, and it's just an encouragement to start young. And if you're older, it's encouragement to start right as soon as you can. So now let's look at some other examples where maybe you're not so young and you're starting to think about retirement, whether maybe you're 30 years old or you're in your 50s and you're starting to think about how you want to retire. So, what you can see, whether it's a 4% interest rate, a 7% interest rate, or a 10% interest rate, is that the power of your dollar starts to decrease significantly the older you get. Because again, your dollar has less time to compound by the time you need it. In these examples, where let's say you're 50 years old, your dollar has very little time to compound. So, in the example where you have a 10% interest rate, at 30, it's $28 because it's had time to double. By the time you're at 50, it's only going to double about 2 more times in its life before you get to 65 years old. And so what you can see is that the monthly savings that you need to become a millionaire by the time you're 65 increases significantly. So let's say you're in your 40s and you want to become a millionaire, but you don't learn investing and you're just putting money into a high yield savings account. You would need to save about $2,000 a month for 25 years. And your contributions, meaning the hard-earned money that you make, you would have to contribute about $600,000 of your own money. Now, your money would still fight for you. It would still earn $410,000 on its own, but let's go to a place where you start learning to invest. So if you learn to invest and you earned a 7% interest rate at 40 years old, now you're only having to save $1,200 a month, which is about $800 less. And your money is growing and fighting for you. So you're only having to put in $380,000 of your own money. And by itself, it's becoming $616,000. And again, here's where the difference really starts to come in. It's hard to appreciate this, but like let's say you did earn a 10% interest rate on your money. The difference between a 7% interest rate and a 10% interest rate is almost $500 difference in a month that you have to contribute. Here's the critical thing that no matter where you're starting, if you give your dollar time to grow, it's going to do a lot more for you. And this gets into the mindset of deciding if we want to spend money in the here and now or we want to save it for later. And it's an encouragement for people that are younger because it means that you don't have to have a high paying job as you're younger to really save and invest a lot of money. If you're older, all this does is hopefully just light a fire under you that encourages you to want to start saving and investing immediately. Because the unfortunate truth is that if you wait too long, if you're in your 60s and you want to retire by the time you're 65, your money is going to have no chance to compound on its own. And so it's going to be up to you completely and your salary to basically carry you to the number that you're trying to hit. And for most people, that's just not possible. And so then you get into a situation where you're at retirement and you don't have enough. And you either have to depend on family members or you're in a situation where you're dependent on the government, which in this day and age is a risky bet. And so this is one other mindset that I want to talk about is there's a lot of push that we don't want to be too frugal in the moment. We need to enjoy the moment that we have now. And that's true. We definitely want to do that. But the flip side of this is that if you don't save and invest early, you run the risk of actually limiting your future self and the enjoyment that you can get into the future. And it makes wealth building so much more difficult. Now, one of the other things, and this is a huge risk for compound interest that you need to understand, is the natural tendency people have is to say, I don't want to wait 7 years for my dollar to double. I want it to double overnight, like in the penny example that I gave you. And the challenge is that there's really no investment that's going to double overnight. In fact, only I can only think of a few, and really they're all incredibly risky. So let's say you take all of your money and you go into a casino and you put it all on a roulette table and you call a number and you hope that your money doubles. Well, what's the problem with that? Well, with risk, if you lose out on that bet, you lose all of your money. So that might seem obvious, but what people don't appreciate is that your compounding starts all the way over. And so when you do this, you destroy the compounding effect of a dollar that you've been working on. The problem is that people are tempted to take these risky bets because they want to become a millionaire or they want this money really quickly and they're not playing the long game, allowing this compounding effect to work on its own. So the goal is what I call always be compounding. We always want to be thinking, how can we be compounding our money to set us up for success? If you're constantly chasing really high risk, high reward investments, you're going to wipe out your account. And so what we want to try to do is find a balance where we can earn a moderate growth in an investment with a moderate risk that if there is a decline, will be able to live through. You can't be so risky that you risk losing everything. So if you're in an investment today that has the chance of going to zero, if it goes to zero, obviously you can't get that money back and the compounding effect or journey that that money is on goes away. And so it's really easy to start compounding and as you start seeing a little bit more money in your account, wanting to get more faster. And that's the trap that people fall into, and then that's where the compounding effect just breaks because they take risky bets and they allow the magic to stop. And it's this fine balance. So if you're not compounding at all, meaning you're not investing your money and inflation is just eating the value of it away until it gets weaker and weaker and weaker, well, you're losing. And then that means that you just have to work harder and earn more money on your own, and your money's not fighting for you. The other key part is to appreciate how little interest rates change the long term trajectory of your wealth. And this is one of the things people don't quite realize when they're paying a financial advisor a 1% fee every year, is that that radically changes the trajectory of their wealth building. And so we're going to get into fees in a future video, but the key to take away here is that little interest rates really do make a difference. And the earlier you start, the more power your money has. Now, I want to show you a couple of other examples just to help conceptualize this a little bit more. Going back to a more realistic interest rate that one can expect as an investor to receive over the duration of their investing life, hopefully, is 7%. So earlier we said that starting at age 0, the power of your dollar is a little bit over $80. So that means that for every dollar you spend, the dollar it's worth about 80 by the time you're 65. Well, you can kind of think about this as like a Lamborghini of dollars because it's having a lot of time to compound and it's worth so much more. And so going at these different levels, this Lamborghini has a dollar power of about 80. The dollar power at around 20 years old is about 21. At 30 or 40 years old, it's about 5. And then, like I said, at the Toyota Corolla point, we're at about a 2.5 for every dollar. The younger you are, the more profitable your dollars are, is how you can think about it. And the really cool message for this is, again, you don't have to earn a lot when you're young to allow this compounding to take hold. So don't get discouraged if you don't make a lot of money today or wherever you're at age wise, because if you invest consistently, it has enough time to compound by the time you need it. Okay, so that's a primer on compound interest. So the key thing here to recognize is that we're constantly playing a game where we think about always being compounding, and we're deciding, in the moment, how can we be happy and satisfied while also saving money for our future, while realizing that if we're saving and investing our money, it has greatly more power if we're allowing it to compound. This can be an encouraging thing for you. So if you're trying to cut out things that don't really mean much to you in the moment, this can be a great way to encourage yourself to save because you can realize how much more powerful those dollars are as you get older. I see a lot of comments. I don't get paid a lot, so I can't build wealth. Hopefully, what you've seen in this is that actually, with a little bit of money, it can become a lot, but because it's starting to fight on its own, and it's not something that you have to earn. So I hope you have a nice weekend, and I look forward to talking to you next week.